It's 5:31. This was noticed at 5:30, so if you're here, thank you for being here. If you're not here, don't be here. we got it on Zoom. I think Rob Stober, who was going to attend, is not feeling well. So Rob, if you're there, you're welcome to attend. For the people that aren't here, I'm Ron Saunders, village manager. We have a contract approved. We had a resolution approved to renew our contract with Freebie for on-demand rideshare. I had several people ask if they could have input on the proposed contract, so I asked some citizens if they would like to have an informal task force, and 4 of them are here tonight. Why don't you go through, I know all of you, but for the audience, why don't you introduce yourself and just indicate why you have an interest in the rideshare contract.
My name is Joe Wishmeyer, and I live on Plantation Key. And I'm here to make sure that the village gets the best bang for their buck. And I think that everybody here is here for the same reason. We want to make sure that we have the best contract that we can get. It is a service that I think is a very viable service, and I think that we need it, and we just want to make sure that we get the best service. Thank you.
Kelly?
My name is Kelly Reed. I own a home on Plantation Key, and I'm probably a weekly user, weekend nights, of the Freebie. I've been using it since its inception, and it's really improved a lot, and so I would like to see it stay, but I would also like to know, the cost for every taxpayer, and compare that to regular public rideshare available or private rideshare. But I am a fan, and I would like it to be fine-tuned and efficient.
Sue Miller, Lower Matacumbe, and I think that this is such a critical service for our community. It has been demonstrated over the last 6 or 7 years that a lot of people depend on it, a lot of people use it, both tourists and locals, and that we should do everything we can possibly do to make it the best service we can possibly make it for both the riders that are using it, the potential riders that should be using it, and for the taxpayers of Alamorada. Thank you.
Hi, Jamie Engel, Plantation Key, and I think I can kind of ditto what everybody else just said. I don't use the service that often, but I do feel it's very, very important for both our visitors and our residents, but I want to make sure that we are getting the best bang for our buck, and that we have all our T's crossed and our I's dotted.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Lindback with Alamorada. Here to talk about the Freebie contract and how it helps our community.
And once again, we also have some people that are going to be attending by Zoom, and I don't know if they're on yet or not, and they can pipe in. And very importantly, we have, looking at our audience, we have some citizens decide to show up. I think I recognize some of them. We have, in the audience, we have our mayor, Don Horton, Vice Mayor Sharon Mahoney, Councilmember Deb Gillis, and Councilmember Anna Richards. So we have 4 of the 5 council members here, which shows you how important this rideshare contract is. We also have Frank in the booth, who, thank you, Frank, for setting this up. He's been here since 1 o'clock this afternoon setting this up. And I also asked Alyssa Panzer here. Alyssa is our grants person, and she's been dealing with DOT on the grant. And so it gets very complicated with the rideshare. So just in case you did have some questions with the grant, Alyssa's here. I also had Alyssa print out, for example, the reports we get from Freebie, and it'll show like a ride request, a daily ride request, if you want to pass them on to Jonathan. But this is kind of to show you, like during the day, the times that you can see the peaks and valleys of the demand. So I thought that was something to look at too. So today what we want to do is get input on the proposed contract, any suggestions. After this meeting, it's more of an informal situation where some people say, well, who's going to monitor Freebie? I was like, we don't want to hire staff just to sit there all day looking at reports, but if anybody wants to, after this, do some monitoring or whatever, you're free to do that, and then you'll have access to our reports, for example, which are public record, but most people don't ask for them. But if you do want them, rather than have to do a public record request, for example, we'll just make them available to you. And if you have some questions about why Freebie is doing something or not doing something, we want, as you all mentioned, the best service possible for the residents of Alamorada. And Freebie's indicated to me they're willing to be, to step up to the plate whenever. It's just if we don't ask them, they're not going to do it. So if we want something, we should ask them, and as long as it's not a financial burden on either side, we should be able to do it. So I think we have some options there. I know that the council has indicated an interest, I think all of them, about in addition to having the on-demand ride-sharing service, we want to look at doing a multi-passenger, for example, maybe a loop where you have a regular schedule. Our main goal is to take cars off the highway. Yeah, however we can do that best. Obviously, congestion is a big problem, has been for years, and we're looking at different ways of getting more grants in addition to the DOT grant with the state and federal government or TDC, for example, to go ahead and try to have a trolley or tram or bus or however you want to call it, to have regular stops. Because the problem with a lot of places I've seen is that if you don't have a schedule, people don't use it. If you have to be at work at 9 o'clock and you're supposed to be picked up at 8:30 and the bus doesn't show up, you're going to quit using the bus because you can't be late. So this might be something, for example, we might be able to incorporate with Freebie or not, depending on the cost. But I thought those are the kind of things I was interested in discussing. I make copies and forwarded to you. We have a copy of the existing contract with Freebie, and there was an extended 2 years ago. So that could be, you could refer to that, or the one that was with the county that was done by Richard Clark, and I know Richard has some fans in the audience, who was the executive director of transit for the county. Of course, they eliminated that whole department, which was Richard, and so he's no longer with Monroe County, but I thought this was a good contract also to look at. It was more extensive than the one with the village, but that was by choice. So I talked with Freebie today. They're willing to use whatever starting point we want to. They just want to continue the service. The other thing to talk about is that we have decided to move ahead with a $2 fare, and there's going to be some transition there. So that's one other reason why we kind of have to get this moving, because we need to have the new agreement with Freebie before we can implement the new fare. So those are just a couple of issues I wanted to bring up. This is an informal meeting, so I don't know how you want to kick it off. I guess we just do like we did before. Why don't we start with Jonathan, since you were last in, first out. So Jonathan, do you have any input, or you've had a chance to look at the documents? Anything particular? And by the way, for those who don't know Jonathan, he is well known in the community. He's with Island Disposal. He has microgreens, and one reason he's on this is because he is the incoming president of the Islamorada Chamber of Commerce. And so I thought it was important to get business input. And Jonathan's a lifelong resident here. His family's been here many years, and with the chamber, he reaches out to a lot more people. So, Jonathan, any input you might have?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to start just by saying that Freebie is very valuable. I mean, you can even see just in the rideshare requests and actual rides given, especially in the mornings, to get workers to the restaurants or wherever they may be working, before the bus routes are actually running. I think this is something that we should definitely renew. Definitely, continue working with Freebie or rideshare company to make sure that we're providing better transport options that aren't just driving your own car. And like you said, I think some sort of loop would be extremely beneficial. How that's set up and the logistics to it obviously are more details to discuss later. But I do see a need for it. I guess questions I have are more so about the fare and how that will affect the requests that are already being received. Obviously, when people don't want to wait on Freebie, they just then call an Uber. That's usually the initial reaction to it. So I'm curious to hear everyone else's input, but I do think just for our employees and the people that work here and live here, this is an extremely valuable service. And even afterwards, after dinner, or even for the servers and workers who work later in the afternoons, this is a great option for them as a means to get to and from work. So very beneficial for the village. And like I said, I'd like to hear everyone else's input and questions that you guys may have. But it will be interesting to see how a fare would affect how many people are actually using Freebie versus just call an Uber and they're coming just for you. You're not waiting around for other rides to be picked up. Tends to be a quicker service, and if there's a way we can bridge that gap, obviously $2 is a whole lot less than an Uber will be, so that is a good start. But yeah, I think a lot of unknowns, but I do know that Freebie has been beneficial for us already, and it would be good for us to continue working with them.
Jamie is Engel is a local realtor, very prominent realtor. She has volunteered before. She was on the Citizens Baseball Field Task Force, so she's familiar with getting input from the public, and she's very detail-oriented, so we look forward to your input. Anything to add, Jamie?
And you flatter me too much. I do have a couple of questions. First, currently, because I think we have to look at where we are right now with the contract that we have. Do we have someone that is designated as the village contact for Freebie?
Yes, that's Alyssa who's here tonight.
Okay.
And by the way, it's mainly because of our grant with DOT. And in case, I think I've told y'all, but the DOT just agreed to extend another year. It was going to expire at the end of 2027, and they're going to extend another year. And it's a 50-50 match. And so it's been very complicated. Alyssa and I talk probably a couple times a week while we're going through the grant process, because when we're talking about adding the fair, I thought it'd be a way to reduce the village's contribution. They said, no, you can't use that to subsidize our share. We can use it to improve the service. So that's one thing I was going to talk about, is what improvements over and above what Freebie currently offers would we want to look at. If we're going to generate more revenue, how would we spend that? So, and if y'all have any particular questions of Alyssa, she is available to speak. But if there's anything in particular about the grant, for example, as far as we don't have someone that sits there all day looking at Freebie report. I mean, I've been directed by council to be fiscally conservative and to not hire more people. We should be looking at maybe reducing our staff. And so we don't have somebody specifically designated to look at the rideshare. We get daily reports.
Okay, but on a monthly basis, they're supposed to be giving us a report 10 days after the end of the month, I think it is. So
Yeah.
I personally would think it would be very helpful as we get into the new contract, that you designate one person, whether it's Alyssa or somebody else, that's going to come to each monthly council meeting and give a 3-minute update on, here's your Freebie report. Here's how many calls came in. Here's how many calls were canceled. Here's how many rides were given. We need to keep track, because I think that's the one thing that I've seen the lack of, is nobody knew what was going on for 7 years. It was just a great service that was happening. But I think if we get on top of it now as we get going with the new contract, that will then help us to be able to improve it as you move forward with it, instead of not having, like, we should have someone that's looking at this on at least on a monthly basis, because how do you know if the service is being used? If, you know, what are the reviews? Have you looked monthly on a monthly basis of who had a problem? How many vans were used? How many hours? And as we're getting into charging $2, basically, I think we're going to have to try to keep track of that too and see what it was. We did that one short recap where we asked for one weekend, and we looked at that one day, which was June 5th, and that gave us a lot of information as to who the people were that, you know, how many people were in a car and whatever. So I do have a recommendation that, and again, we have to see if this will work, but I know we have 2 cars and 1 van. I think we need 2 vans and 1 car, because this is a ride share program. It's not a limousine service. So if we, and again, I don't know how this works, but maybe we can work this into it. If the service runs from 7 in the morning till 12 o'clock at night, if we had 2 vans, and you had a van that started at the northernmost point of our designated area, Mariners Hospital, I think it is, and you had a van that started at the southernmost point, and you had the 1 car in the center, let's say at Founders Park, and if it's 7 o'clock, they just started doing a loop. So when the calls came in, if somebody, let's say, was up by Plantation Key Colony, they could go pick that person up, and in the meantime, if someone called for a ride by Founders Park or Venetian Shores, they could hop in the van with that person because it's a big enough car. Versus if you have 1 car and you've got 1 or 2 people, you might not be able to fit the other people. So it might not be as convenient, let's just say, that you're going to go from point A to point B and get off. But the whole purpose of this program is ride share. And that's the way. So if the vans start and they start doing a loop, there should always be a van or at least a car within the area when someone's calling. I did a poll of some people in Venetian Shores that use the service, and then outside other people, and the biggest complaint that people had was the wait time. It's an hour, it's 2 hours. They'll just call Uber. They get a ride from someone sitting next to them at the restaurant. I know Alina told me that. Somebody called and they said it was going to be an hour, so she ended up driving them home. So we have to have a coordination, but I think if we had the 2 vans which fit more people, and it was a consistent loop, and I think Don talked about doing a loop, that might be our solution to the loop, with the car kind of filling in between. So instead of just using the little cars, because I think that's kind of, it's not getting many cars off the road if you continue to put one person, because on that one day we saw, I think it was an average of 1.25 people in each ride. And that wasn't the purpose of the program, I didn't think. So anyway, I think that might help, and it would help with some wait times and stuff. I do have other questions, but I'll let somebody else.
And I think that's a good example of some suggestions, because I think that's very doable. I don't think it's going to increase the cost to necessarily to freebie, and I think they'd be open to doing that.
It's the same driver. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
you know, the same driver.
It's just a bigger vehicle, and you may have a little bit longer wait to go to where you actually want to end up at. But
Right. Well, and because when I just pulled in here, and it may be shift change, but there were 2 cars in the van sitting over at the charging station. So if we're supposed to have 2 cars on the road at all times, that means we don't have 2 cars on the road at all times. So we got to figure out where those cars are and where, you know, somebody's missing a call. So.
Okay. And next we have Sue Miller, a longtime activist. Sue, why don't you just read us your first 9 pages, and we'll get the second 9 later.
Sue Miller. Sue Miller, the activist. First, I'd like to comment about the vehicles. In the freebie proposal, I was really happy to see that they are offering 4 vehicles instead of 3, with one that would be on standby at all times, apparently. And they also suggested that they would have 3 Tesla sedans and 1 Toyota Sienna that is for ADA accessibility. But they also said at no additional cost, they would give us VW Buzzes. And the VW Buzz holds 7 passengers as opposed to the Teslas. And I think that that would go right in line with improving the service, because now you can accommodate more passengers. So it would be using funding that is in this contract to improve the service. And now you want me to start with the 9 pages? The first 9. I made a list of the things that I find could be improved. And when I say improved, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with what we're doing now. It's just that I think that by reviewing the trends in wait times and canceled trips, that we could improve the schedule and improve the ridership. And now if we're collecting $2 per fee, it will help not only the riders who get frustrated with the wait, but it would also help the taxpayers who would like to see ridership improved, so that the $2 will help reduce what taxpayers have to pay. I think that it's really important that we take freebie up on the idea of changing vehicles as suggested in their proposal, so that we go with 7-passenger vehicles instead of 5-passenger Teslas. And that 5-passenger is including the driver, so it's really 4 passengers and the driver. And I think that we could then use the Buzz vehicle that has 7 passengers to do a loop, and that if we had a continual loop, that people got used to the idea that you know, if they want to go to Publix, that there's going to be a loop that they can get on and spend an hour shopping and get back on the loop to go home. I think it's important, given that they're volunteering to have 4 vehicles on site instead of 3, we're paying them to operate 3 vehicles for 17 hours a day, 365 days of the year. But if they have 4 vehicles on site, we could use 2 vehicles in non-peak times and 4 vehicles during peak times, and therefore we would reduce the number of canceled trips because of waits and the people that actually complete trips that have to wait sometimes, 30 minutes or 45 minutes. I think we'll find that the longest wait times are the people that cancel, that they hear it's going to be an hour, it's going to be an hour and 10 minutes, and they cancel. And the statistics that we are typically provided are the finished trips and the wait times on finished trips. But I think it's even more critical to look at the wait times and the number of people that canceled because of that. I think that the dashboard download that we're able to do can also show that the wait time, when someone says they had to wait 17 minutes or 23 minutes, part of that might be the time it takes for the vehicle to get from the charging station to the passenger, and part of it might be because they're already somewhere else, and or all the vehicles are somewhere else. And so I think it's important to make sure the dashboard that we're able to download gives us all of the data that's important to make a valuable analysis in the end. And I think that will also show us that perhaps we need a secondary location for the vehicles. If all the vehicles are starting out at Founders Park and we have drivers at the sea base, it's going to take a long time. For the wait time is going to be really extended. Maybe we should have a secondary location with a charging station somewhere further south to make the timing better. I think that we talked at the last workshop about the wallet, where you can put money in the wallet so you don't have to pay your $2 each and every time. That you can say, okay, I want to pay $10 now so I get 5 trips in the future. I think that since we're going to have credit card only, I assume that they'll have to pay the $2 by credit card, that we should use the wallet to allow them to tip the drivers with the credit card instead of, I hear a lot of people saying, oh, I only had a $20 bill, so I tipped them $20. And I think that it would be beneficial to the riders if they could pay the tip as well as the $2 fee and have a wallet so that they could have, $100 in the wallet or $10 in the wallet, whatever they choose. And I think that in the dashboard that we looked at, when it gets downloaded, it doesn't mention the drivers. And I think it's important to see, in addition to which car is working each hour, it's important to see which driver is working each hour, because we learned from that there weren't enough drivers. So they had 3 vehicles classified as being in service, but we don't have Dawn's driverless vehicles yet. So we need to make sure that the dashboard has all of the information that we can use to make the system as efficient as it can be. And which brings up another thing. I couldn't find in either contract for the village or for the county what happens if we have a situation where all of the vehicles we're paying for aren't in service. So in other words, what happens if there's a hurricane and we have no service for 5 days? Who pays? Do we still pay as if we have service? I couldn't find that in either contract in a way that was clearly delineated. And the same would be true if for any reason Freebie can't provide enough drivers or enough cars at any one day. Do we still have to pay as if there are 3 cars in service? I haven't gotten to page 2 of 9, so I'll let Kelly go.
Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
Do a couple more, then we'll go to Kelly.
Okay.
Fine. I think you should unload.
The contract, the grant, I should say, with FDOT specifically tells about things that we can do to improve the service. And one of the things I noticed immediately was that they include, as a way to improve the service, to provide bus stops and shelters. And it really, if we want this service to be as useful as it can be, I think it's important to provide cover from rain and sun and whatever else. I don't know how. I look at the people that are stopping, waiting for a bus in the rain and in the heat, and I think that we should be more sympathetic, and I think that we can work with MDT, is that the bus company, and provide more bus stops so that both bus passengers and Freebie passengers will have the benefit of having a place to wait that's safe and where a bus can actually pull off and not cause a traffic jam.
Won't we stop there then, but we'll get Kelly and we'll go back.
I went to another page, you
Yeah,
noticed
okay,
that?
well, yeah. Kelly?
Okay, just to have a few comments about some things that were already said. The loop seems like a good idea, and I wish somebody from Freebie were here to tell us, because I know that they use AI and analytics, not necessarily logic, layperson logic that we would think. But I know in some of the neighborhoods, Venetian Shores, the last street is probably a mile from the highway, Plantation Key Colony. So, if it's going to do a loop on the highway, it wouldn't be feasible to do all these neighborhoods. But I think it would have to be like a hybrid, a loop with a call-out kind of situation. So when they got near your neighborhood, they could come in and pick you up. As far as the shelters go, I wholeheartedly agree. And about 5 years ago, I talked to some council members, and I thought that was going to be a fait accompli to get some shelters. And one example is by the nursing home in Plantation Key. At any time during shift change, you pass by there 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and you see these workers in their scrubs, and they are in the direct sunlight, and they're just standing by the side of the road with no shelter from the sun or from the elements, hot or cold, and I think we're better than that. And there's some really beautiful options you can get. Some of them have lighting and fans. You could have tasteful advertising in there to help defray the cost, but I totally agree with that. I do believe that tipping is available now through the app. I think, you have the credit card in there. I've done it a few times when I didn't have cash. And then when I asked the drivers if they get it, they said, well, we do get it, but we don't know who it's coming from. So we just get a collective number at the end of the night. So, you could be very generous, make sure to tell them if that's the case. I definitely agree with the charging, north and south. 18 miles is a long way. And when Freebie first started, I would get my trips canceled all the time. I'd wait 15 or 20 minutes, and then I'd get a message, sorry, a text, an actual text message, we have to charge, we ran out of power. And I found out that they did not have fast chargers. So it's come a long way apparently, and they do have the fast chargers, and now, if they have a spare car, that will be even better. That has not happened to me in quite a while. But I could see having one all the way down at Lower Mat, and one, maybe the hospital already has a charger that they might even be able to to tap into or help defray the cost. But whether they did a loop or not, I think it would be a good idea to encourage them not to always come back to one home base, kind of like a police department would have, districts, or you put your fire stations and you scatter them around the highway for that reason. As far as the cost goes, I was telling the manager earlier, I would always like to see what the average taxpayer pays. Usually you pick per $100,000 evaluation and give us an idea, because even though not every taxpayer is going to use every amenity in the city, not everyone's going to use the baseball field or the dog park, but it's a lot of money. But it may collectively $553,000, but it may not be a lot per taxpayer. Maybe they're paying $30 a year, $40. I can tell you that $2 for a trip, and I usually just go anywhere from 2 to 6 miles away, but an Uber to my 2-mile destination could be $15 plus tip, depending on the availability. And something that I find extremely beneficial about our service is that the drivers have really come of their own. And I know the 3 regular nighttime drivers, they're very good at what they do. It seems to me like they do use common sense to take the analytics that are given to them and sort of make the best of how they pick people up. And I know who they are, and I have told some of them that when I'm by myself and my neighborhood is very quiet, I would prefer not to have male strangers see this single woman go into this house, and they're very good about that. They would text me and say, there's a man in the car, but I know him, and I trust them. But I've also, seen where they jockey it around a little bit and say, I'm going to pick you up first, and then we're going to take you to the house with the 2 men, and the same thing for the way back. It's a little easier when you're going home, because when you're in the car, you know who's in there. But I did get in the van one time about just before midnight, and there were some kind of rowdy, inebriated people who were going all the way down to Lower Matt, and I wasn't too happy going to the house, so I just had them let me off down the block. But to contrast that with the safety that you have with Uber, in Miami, a lot of bad things happen with the Uber. It's a little scary. You never know if the man who's picking you up he could look like that person. They often hand off their cars. And when I drive home with Uber, if I don't know them, I almost always have them leave me at the end of the block and just tell them I'm going into that house at the end of the block. So I'd be happy to stay on and do some follow-up compliance. And I also, as far as the cost goes, I looked up how many of the cities in Dade County, and 34 cities in Miami-Dade County, and 20 of them have the freebie, and it's understandable why some of them don't. Some of them are purely residential or small, but I was trying to figure out how to compare apples per apples. North Miami, for example, they pay based on a 70-hour week. Their city's a lot bigger. I was trying to look at the same city population and the geographical size, but really all are unique. They're all different. Nobody's as linear as we are. The drive is a little bit different. But that's what I would like to see, is look at some of the other deals. I've heard that Key Biscayne is an example we look at. I spent a lot of time up in the northeast coastal area, where Bay Harbor, Bal Harbor, and Surfside, those towns, they're like, Bay Harbor's our population, but they're very small. They might be a mile wide and a little more dense. And they link their 3 freebies. They have 3 different contracts, but they allow you to go over the border and get together. So the bottom line really with that is, I'm sure Freebie will tell you that it's not apples and apples. There's a different kind of fruit in every city, so that's not quite so easy. Thank you.
Joe?
Well, some of my concerns also, along with them, would start out with, in the contract, is how many cars and how many drivers we have, so that we can look at charts like this and find out when the peak hours are. One of my big problems in looking at this chart is how many trips were requested and how many were actually completed. There's a big difference in some of these, and I assume that that has to do with the wait times. So whatever we can do to reduce some of these wait times, whether we change the hours, maybe we don't need all the cars from 10 o'clock to midnight, but we need more cars from, say, 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock when people might be going out for dinner. I know that in reading the Key West contract, they start so early in the morning and they end early at night because they're concentrating on getting people to and from work. Now, I know that a lot of our workers don't actually live here, but that would be a great place for us to start, is to find a way to get our workers to and from work. As far as now that we're going to be charging, in order to try to promote this, it also said in our contract that they are responsible for doing some marketing. And I believe that whether or not we just rely on freebie, or whether or not, if we have an oversight committee, maybe some of us even would go to some of these resorts and maybe sell them, say, why don't you get 1,000 vouchers for your clients? And that would make it much easier for them to use, and it would also benefit us by having more and more ridership. I believe that I understand that one of my concerns was, okay, I hear it from people that say if they can afford $800 a night for a hotel room, they can pay more than the $2 that the residents who are paying for this can do. But I think that has to do with the grant situation, and we don't want to do anything to interfere with any of our grant money. But it's just something to consider in the future when we start doing our own ride share, as to how many people we're picking up, and by getting all the readouts, we can find out how many people are coming from the resorts and how many people are coming from other places. So that would also be a great way for us to help offset the cost when we take it over. As far as an oversight committee, getting the readouts once a month, I understand staff is busy and all, and if you were looking for a couple of people just to be on the committee to oversee stuff and just go over some of the data, and then maybe get together with a representative from Freebie and say, look, these times you're not having many riders, so can we switch times to when they're busier times? I would be more than happy to donate some of my time for that as well. The continuous loop, I think, is a great idea. People have talked about that already. The other thing, instead of doing a 2-year contract, I think it would be good to do a 1-year renewable contract. That way, if we just renew it every year, if we have a few tweaks here and there that we want to make to the contract to help make the service a little bit better, I think that would be more advantageous than doing a guaranteed 2-year contract. One of the last things is, and I know that they're supposed to have something in their car so they know where their cars are all the time. If there was a way to coordinate, being 18 miles long, if there's a car, say they're going all the way down to Seabase, okay, and then they're coming all the way back up, well, we don't want all the cars to be up on the north end at the same time. So if there's cars that aren't doing too much up there, they should say, hey, start working your way down south so that we have more coverage, and there again we can cut down on the wait times. Because seeing some of these differences, they're really remarkable as to how many requested and how many were actually done. So whatever we can do to help that out, I think we ought to be able to put that in the contract.
Okay, before we go back around again, Frank, is there anybody on Zoom, for example, I know Rob Stober and Alina Davis may be zooming in. Do you have anybody?
Rob Stober is on Zoom, but otherwise we have no attendees.
Okay. Rob is the president of the Chamber of Commerce, I guess Jonathan's the incoming chamber president. So, Rob, if you can hear us, if you have anything you want to offer, we've already gone around once.
I can hear you. Not sure how long anybody will be able to hear me. I think I appreciate everybody's comments. I'm not going to challenge too many of them, but I do have a couple things that I want to point out. One is, a continuous loop needs to be carefully managed with demand, because the way it works, and I'm going to call it a major metropolitan area, is that half the time the bus is going to be at least half full. And we're not going to have that situation in Islamorada. So while I like the idea that it could be scheduled, I don't know. I'd have to hear from somebody how that's going to work, because we have, I think, two kinds of traffic around here. One is there's no traffic at all. You can whip down from Plantation Key to downtown Islamorada in 12 minutes. And the other choice is it's 30 minutes. So I'm not sure how a scheduled loop like that would work. One of the big things that I don't like is, first of all, I do really like freebie, and I think we absolutely have to have it. And I have no problem with the $2 fee. Zero problem with that. But the 1.25 occupants per trip is a really low number. And if the goal is to get, I see freebie as, a number of goals, but if the biggest goal is to get cars off the highway, we're barely achieving that. And so I liked what Sue said about going to 2 VW buzz vans and having 7 passengers in it, because you're going to, 1, take a bunch of cars off the road. 2, you're going to be more efficient if we can get 3 or 5 passengers for trips around. That's going to be more efficient, and I think that would decrease wait times. As to now, we have, we're sending a car one direction or the other with one person in it or 2, but 1.25 passengers per average ride, and we really need to be aiming for something higher than that. And I think freebie probably has a better statistic, but I would be excited if that number was doubled, 2.5. So I think I'm losing my voice, but I appreciate everybody's comments, and thanks.
Thank you, Rob. And we have a couple of people in the audience beyond our council. Once again, for those tuning in late, we have 4 of our 5 council members here. We have our Mayor, Don Horton, Vice Mayor Sharon Mahoney, Councilmember Deb Gillis, and Councilmember Anna Richards. We've been joined by 2 citizens who are here. Cheryl or Scott, do you want anything you want to add?
Cheryl Culberson, Plantation Key. I'm a frequent rider with freebie. I also use it at my home in Pinecrest, and I've used it all over Miami. We are not getting full utilization here. A portion of it is that most of the residents probably don't know it exists. And then there's an arrogance that we have as Floridians and Americans towards using public transportation unless you happen to live in the Northeast or California. So people need to know that this exists. I have had great luck with freebie. It has been a wonder for me, especially when I damaged my knee and could not drive. It got me everywhere I needed to go. Sometimes I have to wait, but I would have to wait on somebody to come pick me up too. It's not that big of a deal. One solution might be, I was thinking about this on the way home and the way that I have seen it done in Pinecrest, is that they are positioning one on each side of Pinecrest so that when they start in the morning. Now, one of the differences is, yes, they do use it in the morning because it comes from the Daytrans Center down into Pinecrest itself. For those of you not familiar with Pinecrest, that's the main mobile line in Miami where a lot of people come in by bus or by the train, and then they go down into Pinecrest or they leave Pinecrest because nobody wants to drive downtown to go to the courthouse, and that's how we go downtown. But it works, and it works beautifully. There is also the option to have this combined and get Key Largo to get on board, because you have a lot of people that need to come in from Key Largo. And if you're going to talk about using this with employees, a lot of employees here live in the Key Largo area from mile marker, from the Jewfish Creek Bridge south. Not necessarily north of there, but that all of those homes over on the Bayside, that is tremendous housing for so many of the employees I see that work in this community and throughout the entire Upper Keys. You need to seriously consider having that extension. We did that in Miami. You've already done it where we take it to the hospital and to the Tavernier town. In Miami, we extended it out of Pinecrest, Palmetto Bay, and Cutler Bay. It goes up to the Day Trade Center, it goes over to Dadeland, and it goes to that circle there, so it connects with major transportation centers. Yes, it takes a little longer. You might have to say, Key Largo, you need to kick in X number of dollars, but you have more people utilization, and if you increase your ridership, you will have better utilization and better optimization of what you're putting in for funding. The bigger issue is, I have been at almost every hotel here, and I notice on the door there's the freebie sign. People just don't see it. Unless you slap them in the head with it, they don't see it. They don't know what it is. And I'll be very blunt with you. Some of the problem, if you get a lot of people over age 60, they're not going to use an app. It's that simple. So there might need to be another way. I've had a lot of people that work in the business where I have traveled say, let me get freebie for you. And they do that. Yes, you have to share a ride. Now, some of the problems during early morning is the freebie only holds 4 people. If you've got 6 or 7 people that are trying to go somewhere, that's going to happen. Oh, by the way, you're never going to go fishing using freebie. I can't get my rods in their cars. So skip that one. If somebody mentioned going fishing, they're not going fishing. You can't get your rods, your lunch, and all your crap in the car. So skip that one. But there are other things that can be done. In Pinecrest, Palmetto Bay, and Cutler Bay, and I was just there, I was watching the kids that are transporting back and forth. Now, they might be with a caregiver. But the point is they have an east-west route, and admittedly, it's wider there. But they have an east-west route, and they have a north-south route. So you have them starting in 2 different directions so that they can feed, go in each direction. Something else to think about. But again, the bigger issue here is, can we combine this with Key Largo so we get employees to work, including at nighttime when we close things down and they can't necessarily wait on that bus, or that last bus is not going to come forever. Freebie could get people home for work or wherever they need to go. But those are things you need to seriously consider. Again, I am a frequent user of freebie. I've used it when my husband was still alive. His caregivers were coming to me on freebie. I could get them here and I could get them back, or I could do whatever I needed to do. It was a godsend. Do not remove this service.
And to be clear, the Village Council has approved keep the service. The only question recently was which service to use, whether it was freebie or Circuit Transit. I don't see any indication from the council of not continuing the service. I think they made that decision. So just make that clear in case you're watching from home that...
Let me make that clear. Freebie.
Well, that decision was made. Scott?
Good evening, Scott Goss, Plantation Key. Normally, I'm currently residing and staying on Upper Matacumby while we're doing some home repairs, which has really brought about some, and I heard this was happening, and some just further frustrations with, well, I mean, as a parent of 2, my ask is to consider changing the age, the minimum age, from 18 to 13. As I understand it, the current minimum age is 18, and I think that there are other freebie areas that allow for children of the age of 13 and older to use it. Uber currently allows, you know, a whole teen program where they can take Uber if they're 13 or older. And so, you know, it's just, as a father of 2 here, both mom and dad both work. It's really hard sometimes to, you know, we understand that's our duty, right? We play Uber for our kids, just shuttling them from here to there, from dance to baseball to practices. We are blessed to normally live right here where they can ride their bike or their one wheel to Founders Park. However, just experiencing what we are now, where we're in Upper Matacumby, you know, with the kids out for summer, we're not traveling anywhere. We're both working, and the kid, unless they leave with us first thing in the morning, or it's after 5 or 6 p.m., they're stuck at the house all day. Now they can go jump on their bike and one wheel and go, you know, north and south to agree, but maybe we're overprotective, but there's no way we're ready to let them play Frogger across US 1. So if they want to get to a park, or if they want to get to anything across the street, they don't have a means to do that. There's no crosswalks on Upper Matacumby whatsoever, or even, you know, close to, unless you're at the high school, I guess, right? That's the only one. So just having another option from time to time to be able to help get kids to, you know, an engagement or a youth group on a Wednesday night at the church, or something where, you know, we're not looking to replace our obligation as parents to get them around and fill that void until they get their driver's license and they get some freedom on their own if they can work, which that would be another positive effect of it is, my 14-year-old would love to go, bag groceries at Publix or get a part-time job this summer, but we can't, guarantee that we're going to be able to get him to and from whatever hours he has. So again, just as another option, I've taken Freebie from time to time, love it. It's been too long of a wait for us sometimes, but other time it works out great. It's never really been a huge, thing for us either way. We're happy to have it. We enjoy it, and we just love to see the services expanded a little bit to where we can use it more. Thanks.
Thanks, Scott. That's good input. While we're looking at the audience, once again, we have 4 or 5 council members here. If any of y'all want to add something, you're a citizen like everybody else, so if you want to say anything.
First, I want to thank y'all for doing this. There's some great ideas coming out of here, and it's really helpful for me because I got to tell you, for probably 3 years, I've envisioned a loop system. But mine might be a little bit different, and it may work and it may not work. But I always envisioned that loop system always having one of the buzzes going from south to north and one of the buzzes going from north to south and crossing each other, but constantly going. That they would be, as long as they're safe and reliable and clean and timely, I felt like it would be a great alternative than just the on-demand. I personally don't see where on-demand takes any traffic. In fact, I believe that it puts one more car on the road because it has to leave point A to go get you at point B and then take you to point C. And where if you left your house, you're just going from A to B or A to C, however it works. But we've actually put somebody else on there to go get you to go do that. So I always envisioned using the old road and always going, constantly going. The DOT thought that was not a bad idea, and actually our Congressman Jimenez thought that was a good idea. There's a lot to work out on that, right? Because we have to have places for people to at least cross the road and park their car or park their bike or whatever to be able to get onto the old road. But if we were on the old road and all they had to do was jump the bridge, then we could lessen the traffic on the highway by staying off of the highway. And on those times when the traffic really gets backed up and we don't allow other than local traffic on the highway, on the old road, which has become a huge problem when people are leaving. People are coming first thing in the morning to go to their places of work, or tourists are coming every Thursday or Friday to get down to Key West or Marathon, and then leaving every Sunday, and that traffic really backs up. So that's why I kind of always envision it being, like you said, Sue, an autonomous vehicle. And I always envisioned it being, because that is the way of the future, whether we want to accept it or not, or whether DOT wants to accept it or not, it is the way of the future. I have a client right now that takes his kid to Miami to a special school every day. He jumps in his Tesla, pushes the button, he's working while that car is taking him and his kid to Miami. He doesn't touch the steering wheel. It parks itself when he gets there. But these ideas that y'all have, a lot of them are really good ideas, and I really like the idea of getting it to where there's more passengers in those vehicles. And there's a lot to work out with that system that's going back and forth. But I do believe that it's something that we ought to continue to look at. So thanks for what y'all are doing.
Gillis.
I also thank you for getting involved. It's, as sitting on council, it's always difficult to hear from the public, so thank you for coming tonight and spending your time working on this. In order to put more cars or more people in cars, you also have to consider the times that because we are a small community, it may be a little bit more difficult to put 3 people in the car instead of that 1 person or 1.2. The reports are coming out because Susie needs a ride at 8 and somebody else needs a ride at 8:30, and it's a small pool that you're trying to push together. And in talking with Freebie in the past, they said, yes, we can put it so that there's but it creates longer wait times then. So you have to be careful with that. I do like the idea of, and several of you said it, of putting more cars on when we're busier, and we can see that in the chart that they provide, and less cars later. I'm not sure that the grant program allows that at this time, but I think that that would be a good change to the program, that they are, they can't use any more hours during the day or the week, but you can shuffle them to where they see that the peak periods are. But I think that's a grant change. Not that grant changes are impossible, we've got them done. But I don't think that's a contract necessarily thing. I mean, we could put it in the contract, but until we get it approved by the grant, it can't go into a force. But thank you. You did come up with some other ideas that I like too.
Anyone else in the audience? Frank, anybody else on Zoom? Frank, anyone else on Zoom?
No, sir, no one else on Zoom.
Okay. I guess we can come back up to you all, and I think we've got some good ideas. Once again, anything specific to the contract that you would want to see added or subtracted. We have 2 samples. We have the existing contract with Freebie that was extended for another 2-year period 2 years ago, and then we have the sample from the county that was done by Richard Clark, whose fan club's out in the audience, and so they did it for Monroe County. So when you're looking at those 2 contracts, was there anything specific to the contract? Because those are good starting points. Anything in them that you want to take out or add, because that's kind of discussion I need to have with Freebie is, it's nice, we got some great ideas tonight, which I want to incorporate, but anything specific to the contract?
I would like to add some service standards, because I didn't see any that were specific in there, including like wait times. Is there a standard in there, 15 minutes, 20 minutes? There should be some sort of a service standard in there. I think the vehicle uptime, the charging, that if we could put in the second charger, I think that's going to help a great deal. Also, and this is all under service standards, cancellation rate, like are there any penalties for poor performance by Freebie? If the wait time's too long, if it's an hour, if we have a number of cancellations that aren't being picked up, if things like that. So that we can have some leverage, basically, in our contract. We should be able to go back and look at that. Also, I already talked about having the monthly update reports, which they give us, which I think that's a good thing. Also, do we track the use of the ADA van? Because I know that's one of the requirements in there too, is that it's available. Do we get a lot of use of that? I was just curious if we have any. Like, is it just the van, though, or is it the cars that can service that?
The car will accommodate a wheelchair.
The car will accommodate? Okay.
Correct.
Okay. In the contract I read, it said Freebie is going to assist. There's a clause in there that they're supposed to assist us with marketing. And so I think we need to be specific about that, not just in general. Like, they should help us put together a written marketing plan. There should be like an outreach calendar, something we can do maybe along the lines of social media so that we can get the word out that the service is there. Business outreach, senior outreach. And then again, we need to be able to go back and look at those reports and make sure that those things are happening. Because if, like, I think it was Cheryl that brought up or someone brought up the sign on the hotels, and then if they don't know what it is, do we have someone that's going to the hotels, talking to the concierge and letting them know, promoting it, something like that. What was the other thing? I think we need to also hold them to our customer reviews and getting a certain number of customer reviews that are written in there, so we can poll the riders and see what they feel at the end of the rides. If there's a way to do that, that might be helpful. Let's see.
While you're looking, I want to go back to Jonathan and see, do you have any specifics to the contract, Jonathan?
Yeah, I mean, I guess more so things to add in that may not be addressed that, we've been discussing. One of them being just like you were mentioning, what happens when someone's getting picked up in Lower Matt, the other cars are up on Plantation Key, and they're heading to Plantation Key as well. I mean, is it possible to have a lead driver, so to speak, if that's not something they're already doing, someone who's quarterbacking the cars that are on the road to make sure, hey, we aren't going to have any cars down south when you guys have to start heading that way. That way, someone who's on duty at all times is essentially the lead to make sure we're keeping most of our area serviced as much as possible. And then the other thing to that is, if we're starting with 3 cars and we're putting them on the road at 6, 7 a.m., they're all going to run out of battery at about the same time. So, how do we, when they all start to run out of battery at the same time, how do you cycle them in? And I don't know if that means always having a spare car that's on the charger, so there is no time where, one driver is waiting on their car to be picked up, and then you get a text saying, hey, sorry, we have to charge. That's going to be a recurring issue every day if all cars are starting at the same time. So to have some sort of cycle going where that isn't going to be an issue, I'm not sure if that's something that we could add in, especially if they're talking about having a 4th vehicle. If the 4th one is a standby vehicle that's staying charged, and if it needs to be swapped, obviously the one that gets swapped for it is then on a charger. And I do like the idea of having 2 buses. I'm a little bit, I don't know, I guess I look at this chart and there's over 20% more than that cancellations every hour. The weird thing is why when we have 60 or 70 requests, we're doing 40, 50 rides, no problem, but then when we have 40 requests, we can't do but 20 or 30. That doesn't seem to add up. If we can do 40 requests during an hour where we have 75 or 40 rides when we have more requests, why when we have 40 requests are we not being able to get all 40 or at least close to them? Rob has a great point about circuits timing being an issue when it comes to traffic and certain weekends, certain times of year. And then past that, with the circuits, I'm also a little concerned about the safety side of it, most of our residents are in 3 major neighborhoods. You have Indian Mound, the Colony, and where the airstrip is. And if you live on the back streets there, how are you going to get up to the bus stop, especially if you're going out to get groceries, or in the middle of the night, if you're a single woman and you're getting dropped off at 10, 11, 12, I know we live in a safe community. I know this is safer than most, but that doesn't mean bad things don't happen. And I think it kind of puts a lot of the riders in bad situations when you have to walk 10 minutes to get to the back of the Colony, because you can only get dropped off and picked up right up front. And how you fix that with, one additional vehicle that's on call, so to speak, I don't really see that working very well, because Freebie is the door-to-door service, and I know we can make it more efficient, maybe get more riders if it is on a circuit, but I would just keep that in mind. I almost think then people are going to be requesting door-to-door service versus circuit service, and then you're almost have 2 different categories of riders that you're trying to, how do you request one and not the other because you live so far back in a neighborhood. But yeah, mainly the lead driver and the battery charging, I think, are some issues that could be addressed in the contract.
Okay, so Jonathan, that was great. But it also just got me thinking, if we had, because my idea was really just starting at opposite ends so that someone's always there, but if we had one van that just ran on the south side of Snake Creek Bridge or whatever, we had one van that ran on the north side to a certain area, and then we had another one, so that those are the only areas that, so it would be quicker and easier. I mean, if there was some way to control that, I know people want to go from here all the way down to there, but if we keep doing that, you look at this chart and you see the wait times and you see that's an issue. So I think this is something you need to talk with Freebie about. I'm sure that we're not the only ones that have ever brought this up or talked about it. So maybe it's a real sit down, here's now that we're putting this out, maybe they can help with that. But the other thing I was going to say in for the contract was I really think we need to have performance standards and some penalties or something that we can go back to so that we can hold them accountable for all of the things that are in that contract. I kind of feel like they haven't been accountable, not because they're not, it's just because nobody's asked, nobody's followed it up probably for all these years. So let's just start the right way. I think it's a great service. We have to have it. We just want to make it as good as possible.
And really quick, I'd like to add to that. I completely agree that service standards are essential. But I also think especially if you're talking about, even though $2 is not much, if you're adding a fare to Freebie, which was a free service, if you're adding a fare to it, then you're going to be even more scrutinized on the service that's being provided. Much more scrutinized. Even though it's only a $2 fare, it's not just a free service anymore, and they're going to be wanting better service, even though it's only $2. The other thing that is contract focused, I would like to repeat that one of the residents said is extending this to Key Largo. I know that makes this a little bit more complicated, but yes, a large majority of our workers are coming from Key Largo. Most employees do. So, yes, exactly. So that would extremely help the businesses in Alamorada getting our workers down here efficiently because most of them live up north and outside of the village.
Good point. Joe, do you have any specifics for the contract?
Yes. When you look into the scope of work in the Monroe County contract, one of the big things is that for the trips, and I think they do a pretty good job of this now, but they need to make sure that they notify the rider when they're going to be within about 2 minutes, so that might cut down on some of the wait time, because they may tell you got to wait 30 minutes, but they may show up in 20 and you're not planning on it. So if they can notify you, I think that would help alleviate some of the wait times. There's also a section in here on fares, on how they're going to be collected. We don't have anything in our contract yet because we don't have the fares, we haven't been collecting them. So I believe that the section in here on fares and also in the software training should also be, it's in the, it's on like the second or third page. Here, yeah. One more page. It says fees. Good. And then the next page at the bottom is the software training. So basically the first couple of pages here, have a lot of the good ideas from the Key West contract that I think we could incorporate into our contract to make it a little more, to have it have a little more clarity. As far as marketing goes, I will say that there were times, I don't want to give any particular business any advertising, but Florida Keys Distillery used to give a 15% discount if you used Freebie. They're promoting Freebie. I think if we approach a lot of the businesses, I think that they could help out their business. They could get more people coming to their particular business because they're offering a discount, and we would get more business by getting more people to use the Freebie. So there's a lot of great marketing plans that are out there, and I don't know how incentivized Freebie would be on doing it on their own, because they kind of get the same no matter what. So if there's a way that we could have somebody to go out and do that, or whether we have somebody from a council or committee going out and doing that.
They do
Marketing
have
would
some
be big.
advertisers right on the app, and they'll offer you a discount. So I don't know how that's worked out, if they pay for that, if Freebie has solicited that.
Free advertising on there.
It's free?
To the businesses, it's free advertising.
Okay, I thought maybe they had to pay for that.
And once again, since we're going to start charging, I think we can do more marketing, because before, like, what was the point of marketing if you're not getting revenue? But I've been directed by council to run it more like a business, and so we're going to run it more like a business and derive revenues and cut costs where we can. So I think these are good ideas when we're talking to Freebie, because they're open to it. You know, I think they want to do as efficient a service as possible, and they want us to be happy, because I'm sure they want to keep going with the contract. And we, once again, this is a grant, so we also have to keep in mind whatever DOT is. That's why, once again, Alyssa's here, because we're going to be communicating not just with Freebie, but also DOT to make sure that nothing in the contract would conflict with the grant. So
And
I'm saying
just
it's moving parts.
to clarify, for anybody that might be listening, it is $2 per rider, not $2 per ride.
Right.
That's a clear, because I had that question come up.
Okay.
They thought it was per car. I said, no, it's per person getting, oh, that was the other thing. Is there an age, so if I bring my 5-year-old, which I don't have, but if I brought my 5-year-old with me in the car, is that child going to get charged? Is there an age limit, like where the kid doesn't get charged? That might need to be, you know, put in there as a clarification.
Yeah. And I think that's I know Scott brought that up about the minimum age, and he talked to me about it. I went to the chamber lunch and I did follow up, and they said that in other areas it's not 18, they could go as low as 14. They don't recommend under 14 if you're the only rider. I think what you're saying, though, is if you're accompanied by an adult, I don't know that you would have to have a minimum or maximum age limit, because if you're an adult, it's like going to the movie. You can't go by yourself, but if you're accompanied by an adult. So I think those are things we can clarify in the contract. I don't see personally any reason why a 15-year-old couldn't order a freebie on their own, because they're going to have a wallet, for example, they could load up. And so I think I thought that was a good point by Scott, if the kids want to go to get a part-time job or something. So Freebie said they do it in other areas, so apparently that would be not a problem if we wanted to change our contract. And I'll try to get input from the village council if they don't care about lowering the age, but I don't see a reason why that would be a problem.
I think that would be great.
Yeah.
Very helpful.
Just go back a little bit. Could you re-explain, maybe I misheard you, but why the $2 fare wouldn't go towards the village's portion of what we're paying Freebie for the contract?
Once again, Alyssa and I have spent numerous hours going back and forth with DOT. Apparently, what they're saying is that if we have, it's a split 50-50. We put in about $256,000. State contributes half. If we do something to raise fares or get revenue, we can't use that revenue to reduce our share. We can use that revenue to improve the service. And so that, otherwise, they'd say, well, you're getting a grant, but then you're also charging customers. You can't use those fares to subsidize your share of the grant. And Alyssa, give me maybe it might be time to hear from Alyssa, since she's the one.
Is there an example of that, of what we could use that for?
No. This, once again, is Alyssa Panzer. She is our grant specialist, and she is the one who does have communication. I think y'all were asking, we are required, I think, twice a month to have communication with Freebie. So she's been designated by me to be the main point person with Freebie and with DOT. So welcome, Alyssa. And if you want to fill in any gaps or answer any questions, we thank you again for being here.
So just to touch on the fares, so it does essentially reduce the cost per month. So we get a monthly invoice from Freebie for a service that we have contracted. Say it costs $45,000. If we collect fares, the fares are reduced from that invoice. So then $5,000 in fares, that's a $40,000 invoice. It's like a discount on our invoice. The way the FDOT grant works is that whatever our invoice is after fares, that gets split 50-50 with FDOT. So the fares reduce the overall program cost, and essentially it extends the longevity of the grant. So if we have a grant for a service for a year, we add fares, it reduces our monthly invoice, that grant might be extended by like 2 months. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Thank you.
The fares don't, no. The fares are just part of the whole service pot of funding. So the fares don't get put in like a separate pot of funding to be used for improvements. The improvement component of the service, specifically with the FDOT grant, is that if you're applying for the grant, it should be for improvements and innovation in public transit. And that's a requirement. It's a 3-year grant cycle. So the extended hours is what we did several years ago. we extended hours, and that is what we're currently operating under. We do have an additional year of that because FDOT was very kind and they gave us an additional year. Beyond that, we did apply for another set of 3 years of funding. That grant program has shifted. They amended some of their requirements. They will only fund new components of the service. So we applied for 3 Volkswagen Bugs for the expanded service to try and cover the maximum amount of service. So if that is awarded, that would start in 2028. So there is potential for that down the line. There's also potential of doing that now. It's just a matter of workshopping costs and kind of playing with how we get the most bang for our buck if we're going to get awarded the grant again. There's really no telling. We just applied for that in May. So that'll be a little bit until we hear back from that one. And that wouldn't start until 28. The existing grant, we have our parameters set. We have this awesome workshop going on. We can modify the grant. You guys can't hear me?
Can you talk louder?
You can't even hear me? I'm talking to a microphone. Sorry. We do have the opportunity to try and amend our scope of work, essentially, for the grant. We have to justify it. So whatever we propose, we can justify. And now that we have several years of data under our belt, that will help with whatever we want to justify. And the program's like goals are to have a self-sustaining service. They don't want to keep giving us money. They want to see us able to run this service and have it cover itself as well. So, and for the grant, we are required to do quarterly reporting or oversight monitoring for the contractor. So those meetings have a dedicated page on all the information for the quarter, including goals, complaints, maintenance, looking over the ridership reports, looking over the numbers. And a lot of the things we have discussed, they have come up before. They've been brought up because I'm listening. I listen at all the meetings, any kind of input that's given. I kind of take that over to Freebie because I care about it as well. I kind of got put in this position. And I don't know if you know this, but it's a hot topic. It's a hot seat. But I do care, and I'm working towards other grants in the village for increasing pedestrian and bicyclist safety as well. So they all loop together. And with fixed route and the ideas that you guys are having tonight, those are in discussion as well. And there is potential grant funding coming for maybe even studies that will help us plan those things. Because I don't know if any of you are transportation experts in here, but as somebody that's not a transportation expert that has been in the transportation realm for a little while, it's very complicated. I've learned a lot over the last several months. And so I also wanted to say that we just added a email. It's rideshare@islamorada.fll.us. And that, if you email, if you have any feedback on the program, that will go to the Freebie support staff as well as myself. So that's just one way if you want to feel like your comments are getting to Freebie and the village, that is one method. We also maintain just a ongoing call log with Freebie. Mostly it's filled with a lot of different compliance stuff right now because we went through a compliance review last year. But we do talk to Freebie frequently on a lot of stuff. And they're very receptive to the complaints that I've brought up with them from things that I've heard. Some of the justifications for the lapses in ride requests versus rides given are just that if you are sitting at a bar, you request a ride, you see the wait time, I don't care, I'll order another drink. You stay, you cancel your ride. That's not every scenario, but there are other times where you order the freebie, you don't want to wait, and then you order the Uber. And this isn't me justifying, this is just me trying to share things that I've learned, because I've brought that up before as well. They say that if that line was the exact same as the rides requested, that would be an inefficient service, because you would have too much going on. You need to have a little bit of excess, a little bit of a line, per se. Does anybody have any other questions while I'm up here?
Yes. I do have one. When you're talking about that the fares cannot be used sort of to reduce the amount of money that we pay. I know that in the freebie contract, they were allotting $75,000 in fares and deducting that from an amount of 600 and something thousand dollars to get us down to 530,000 that we're going to apply for the grant. Is that going to be a conflict because they're taking some of that money that they're anticipating in the fares?
No, because it essentially goes to like the service anyway, and since we're paying freebie for this full service, that's where the like difference would be made up anyway. Does that make sense?
When the existing grant that was just approved is through what date?
The contract right now is through December 2027.
September 2027?
December
2027. And the contract we're talking about is through June 30th, 2028.
But I believe they just added through the 2028 year, right? That was the second one they added to it.
We have another one that'll be a new contract with FDOT, but it will start as soon as the other contract ends, which is essentially going to be through December of 2028.
And so is that one that's not an extension of the current one that will require us to add additional services?
No.
So the existing contract with freebie will be 50% will be paid for?
Yes.
Okay. Are you ready for more questions?
Well, let's make sure that, any more questions for Alyssa? I think John has some.
I got a quick question, I guess twofold. So you mentioned that the fares could reduce the monthly invoice, which could extend the life of the grant.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a 3-year grant, how is that, how does it extend the life of a grant that already has an end date? And I guess the other side of it is, you mentioned that, with that we could expand service as well, but then wouldn't that be a change to the contract we have with Freebie if we are expanding the hours, service hours? Or?
You estimate your annual cost for the program, and then if you fall under those costs, say you've improved your program with fares and you're supplementing some of that, it extends when that can end. So it's for an estimated 3 years. It's also something that historically you had to reapply every year, and the village has been a bit behind because we were a little slower after we got the award to begin with to executing our contract. So the timelines are a little wonky, but essentially...
There's not a hard end date.
Yeah, like the contract end date right now is December of 27, but if we keep going at the exact rate we're going with no fares, the actual funding will be up in September or November or October. So we add fares, it will probably last us until December.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor.
To help clarify that, would you say it's a fair statement that it's not a timely contract or grant program as much as it is a dollar grant program? And when the dollars are spent, then the grant's out.
Yeah, you have the funding until you use it up or decide to end the contract.
Any more questions for Alyssa? Thank you.
Yep.
Kelly, did you have any input on the specifics on the contract? Back to Sue.
So just for your information, the 9 pages is really 16 pages, but 3 of them are ideas, and the rest I went through each of the contracts with what I would suggest would be changes, and I'm not going to read them. But if you
on behalf of the audience, we thank you.
If you want to see them, but I would like.
And by the way, let me add anything that you want to add to if you have written documents, I'll get them and I'll try to put them on our website. Yeah, we'll do a report of this meeting. I think we had some good input. We're probably going to record. I think it's been recorded. We'll put the video of this meeting up too. So you don't feel like if you don't want to just read stuff out or whatever, if you want to put it in writing, I'll try to make sure we get it distributed to whoever wants to see it.
I just worry about who reads. I think that it's important. We've been told that the $2 fee has to be standard. Everybody has to pay it. And so I was thinking that it would be good to, and I don't know whether this has to go into the contract or not, but to encourage the bulk sale of rider fee coupons that could be purchased from the contractor for use by businesses or employers, organizations, or individuals to provide guests, employees, and the needy with free coupons. So if the Chica wants to buy 1,000 coupons to give to their guests, they could. So Freebie would still be responsible when they ride for giving us a credit, but they would get funding in advance for selling coupons. And I think that would encourage people if they have a coupon, especially the people that really struggle to pay the cost of living in Alamorada. And a lot of the workers, $2 each way doesn't sound like a lot of money, but then you multiply it by how many days a week they do that, and then they want to go get groceries, and it starts adding up. And so if the employer or some noble person buys coupons to pass out to people that need them, I think that would be a really good thing. I was unclear about whether the $2 fee would apply to children, like if there's babies, are the vehicles, do they have car seats? Can you take a baby with you on Freebie? Are service animals allowed on Freebie? I assume they are.
All animals. I rode with a dog once.
All animals are, in case you didn't hear that. And in the Key West contract, it allowed for the riders a lot of conveniences, I thought, for their riders. Provided for regularly recurring trips, so that if somebody wants to go to work 5 days a week, they could have a reserved trip at 7 o'clock every morning. You would pick them up at their home or wherever to take them to work. It also allowed for advanced trips. So if you know you're going out to dinner tonight, you can call in the morning and reserve a ride to go to dinner. Do we want to do that, or do we want to keep the service the same as it is now? I think we're trying to improve the service for the riders to make it easier for them to use the system. I question, and this probably goes along with your thing about having someone in charge to make sure that the trips are being coordinated right. Is there a priority for the riders? Is it based on when they call in? You might know that. Is it based on the location they're going to or coming from? Is there a priority because you're a regular rider, so that when you call in that you might get priority because you tip well, or because you're calling in often? And
Are you asking Kelly? Because she looks like she wants to respond.
Well, because she's a rider, she might be.
Well, I can't answer with certainty to that, but what I notice seems to happen, like Jonathan mentioned, it would be good to have like a supervisor on duty or a quarterback kind of a thing. And what I see happening is that some of the seasoned drivers do try to, instead of driving 18 miles to pick someone up, they try to use logic and maybe combine them. So, and they do text people too, so they can tell you, the one time that I did ride with the dog, it was in the Tesla, which is 3 rows. So there's, the one passenger seat, then there's a space in between the 2 center row, and then 2 in the back. And the dog needed a bath. And the dog rode right smack in the center. And so one of the riders that was not with that dog had to sit with her white pants right next to the dirty dog. So
maybe we shouldn't allow anything but service dogs.
Service animals, yeah.
I had a comment about the idea of the loop, and I know that Dawn lives on Plantation Key, I think, on the Bayside, and it's fine to suggest that we should have the loop on the old highway, but then are we going to ask people to cross the highway to get to the loop? I mean, I think that would be a terrible situation to have to cross US 1 to get to the old highway, no matter what island you're on. And so I think the loop would have to be on US 1. And insurance, the insurance that's in the contract for Islamorada is different than the insurance requirements in the contract in Key West. I don't understand insurance, and so I don't know whether Freebie has insurance that covers all their users or whether they have to have specific insurance for us, but I question why ours would be different than Key West. The coverage in Key West was double what the coverage is in Islamorada. And that sort of concerns me because it's dangerous getting out on the highway no matter where you are. One of the things that Key West did differently that I really liked is the branding. And in the proposal from Freebie, they cover branding. And we have learned that in our grants, we're only allowed to have on the vehicles a logo from the municipality and a logo for Freebie. And I don't think we have a logo for Islamorada on the Freebie vehicles. I look at them and I have never seen an Islamorada logo, but I notice that there's more and more times where there are Teslas that look like a Freebie vehicle, and you don't know for sure whether that's a Freebie vehicle or something else. And I think that we should have a logo, and thanks to me taking lessons from Jamie about using artificial intelligence, I actually asked to have a logo created that had Village Rideshare on the Islamorada logo, so that right here, instead of it saying Village, it says Rideshare, and I have a picture of it, and generated by artificial intelligence, and it was, and I thought that was, well, whatever. I just think
we'll
that
take the branding. I think that's a detail we don't need to get into. That's something we can negotiate with them. But once again, I want to keep it because I want to start wrapping up as far as what input on the contract and specifically do you want to you want to change or add something to the contract?
I think is it in the contract that we should change the vehicles so that we get buzzes instead of
No,
Teslas?
I'm saying that we've already covered. I mean, I've got small handwriting, but a lot of notes. And once again, it's being recorded, so I'm going to go back and watch this meeting, and we're going to get it. Please listen to me. We will have an agenda when I'm talking to Freebie because I have to actually talk to them and say what's going to the contract. So I want to go one more time and say anything specific to either the contracts. You had two contracts in front of you. You've already mentioned a lot of them, so I don't want to repeat what you've already talked about. But I'm saying, is there anything we haven't covered that should or should not be in a future contract with Freebie?
I have a concern about the 2-year contract. In the proposal, it says first year for what their proposed dollar amount is. And I think that during the negotiation with Freebie, if we're going to do a 2-year contract, it should be the same terms, because when we approved that dollar amount, we didn't talk about this is for 1 year and then what's going to happen year 2. I think we should attempt at least to negotiate so that the 2-year contract is for the stated amount that was in the original, not, with the credit guarantees.
And I think now that we know that we have the second year of the DOT grant, I think that was part of the hesitation was we didn't want to commit on our side to something where we're not getting the match. Now that we know we're going to get that second year, I think we're more open to having that 2-year commitment, which helps both sides because it's going to lock in, their commitment to us.
And I think in both contracts for the village and for the county, it talks about the length of the contract. Both the county and the village contract were for 1 year with the ability to extend for additional 2 1-year terms. And I think that makes more sense than to have a 2-year contract unless we negotiate it at the same terms as if it was a 1-year contract.
The two things that I think would be important, that I know you brought up the fact that if all the vehicles start at 7 o'clock in the morning, they're probably going to run out of juice all at the same time. So having a way to discuss with Freebie that they have the standby vehicles so they could just come and switch out vehicles so that the service wouldn't be interrupted. And the second, have we talked with Freebie at all on how they would go about collecting this $2 fee and how we would get the credit for it? Or is that still something that is in the works?
Well, it's in the works because I purposely did not want to start any negotiations with Freebie until we had this meeting. I think, and plus the council's here listening, so they'll have input too. And so I think now this was a good meeting as far as starting the discussion with Freebie. I didn't want to go cut a deal with Freebie and then come back and say, oh, that's bad, that's not good. So now we have a good starting point as far as all the stuff that came up. Alyssa's been here. And Alyssa, I guess, wants to say something. So we're going to take this all into account when we're talking to Freebie. So Alyssa, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that right now Freebie does have a standby vehicle. They keep it down here at no extra charge. So when looking at 4 vehicles over there and considering the idea of using 4 vehicles at like the peak times and 2 vehicles at other times, that would revolve around discussions of incorporating a 4th vehicle. Because right now it's the standby vehicle to ensure they can meet that 3 vehicles able to be on the road during all 12 hours or 15, 17 hours of the day.
While Alyssa's here, any more questions that may have arisen for Alyssa? Joe?
How many vehicles do they have in total then? I thought they had 2 standby vehicles and 3 others, so that would be a total of 5 that they have
It's either
here?
4 or 5. It's at least 4. I think it depends on their ADA vehicle. I know it's shifted between a van and a Toyota Sienna. So I can get clarity on that. I can confirm, but it's at least 4. And I believe the way their fares are collected would be through the app.
Any other questions for Alyssa? Susan, do you have any more specifics for the contract?
No. I did want to comment, though, that the in the proposal, it says that all of these vehicles that Freebie uses have 250-hour charges.
Okay. Well,
Not
we'll try
200, I'm sorry, 250 miles.
I was going to say 250 hours sound like a lot more than I would have expected.
Miles, 250 miles.
Okay.
And so I'm not sure how that equates because all of the trips are different lengths of time. And so when you're back at the charging station, I'm assuming they would charge even if they're not empty.
And that is one of the things I definitely want to bring up is having a separate charging station on the south end. I think that's I think we all have consensus on. That makes sense to have one down there. They don't become the founders to get charged. I'm going to bring about the types of vehicles, number of vehicles, et cetera. I think the standards we talked about that's already in some of the contracts. We'll make sure that's there. I think we had a lot of good ideas tonight. Let's go like one more round. Any closing thoughts? Jonathan, we'll start with you and work back this way.
Yeah, I think that was a great list. Just to reiterate, I would add on, and for the charging reason, some sort of lead, who's in charge or who's quarterbacking the situation. That way you don't have all vehicles going to get charged at the same time and only one there, ready to go, and you have 2 vehicles going to try to get into 1 or 2 drivers. I'm going to go ahead and give my unpopular opinion from what it seems, whether you guys like it or not.
Go for it.
Not a huge fan of the $2 fare. I think that itself. Now, if it's an extended service because, hey, we're doing some routes to Key Largo for a certain or a non-resident using the freebie service, but in trash terms, if I told somebody, yes, Village is covering the garbage contract, obviously with Island Disposal. If we are also going to charge you for every time we come to your house to pick up your garbage on top of that, I would be a little frustrated. Now, for someone who's a non-resident, or if we had to go and provide extra service, if there's some sort of extra service beyond what the village has contracted with the contractor, Freebie, I think then that, okay, have some fares there. But I'm not a huge fan of the $2 fare, and I know it sounds like, oh, it's not much, but it really does add up for the people who are using it to get to and from work. There's a reason why they don't just have their own vehicle going to and from work. And especially when it goes to additional riders, if you have your 3, 4, or 5-year-old, son or daughter with you, for a new parent or someone who's in charge of another life, there's enough expenses with that, and now you also have to pay an additional $2 if you're using Freebie because you have your kid with you. I think the $2 fare, especially per rider, brings in a lot of issues, but that is my unpopular opinion from the sound of this council.
Jamie?
I'm going to say that I agree with you, so it's not that unpopular. But I think if we switched it from per rider to per ride, like for the car, so you're not, it's kind of, and we've talked about this, like coming into Founders Park, there's a fee to get into the park. It should be a fee per car, in my opinion, not a fee per person in the car. That's what the national parks do. Pay one fee, get in however many people in the car. But I do agree with that because I think it does, if you have kids or you're trying to get someplace and it's $4 to get there and now it's another $4 to get back, right? That $2 fee is not a $2 fee. And if you're going back and forth to work, then if it's a husband and wife, again, it's $4 to work, $4 back times 5 days a week or whatever. That does add up. So I think it's something that should be considered maybe per ride, not per person, if we can get it down to that. And I did, my other points that I've already discussed, I do think the marketing is a very important thing. I love Sue's idea about the coupons and going out and, getting some discounts. And I mean, I can see even as a real estate agent, giving those as closing gifts to someone who's just getting into town and saying, hey, here's 10 free rides on Freebie. Again, it will encourage them as new residents to move and get and use the service. So I think that's kind of a different workshop to talk about, but it has to be I think that part in the contract about them helping us with marketing is really, really important to get the word out to get that taken care of. And again, the follow-up, but I think it was a really good first meeting. You'll do a good job on it.
And just to add that as Village paid service, and the name itself, it's not Circuit, it's Freebie, and I can just already see the t-shirts or hats being made, Freebie, not so free, right? Like it's for Village residents, I think is my holdup with that. Outside of Village residents, absolutely, if we need to charge a fare, I don't know how you even, the logistics of verifying, that would be difficult, so, oh, okay, fair enough, but that's what I got.
Sue?
I disagree with these two. I think that it should be per rider.
We're not voting, so just...
And we had proposals come in based on $2 per ride, and the numbers that they proposed were based on the numbers that we put in our RFP, and it's a little late to change that. And so I disagree with them. I will say that I think that the whole goal here is to help both the riders and the taxpayers. And when you improve ridership, you're helping the taxpayers with this fee. And I think that in the end will prove to be a very worthwhile thing, because I think that the ideas that are being presented now will definitely improve the experience that the riders have, and therefore we can spread the word and get more people using the system. I think I was shocked to hear that how many people don't even know we have this system. We really need to get the word out. We have gas prices out of sight. Why aren't I getting in a car in Lower Matacumbe and going to Publix to do my grocery shopping instead of using my own gas? And I also wanted to mention that the one vehicle that we're getting in the contract is a self-charging vehicle, so doesn't need to be charged on the charger. And so anyway, I think we've made a lot of progress with some of our ideas, and I absolutely will be watching to see how we implement some of the analysis for the future, because this chart is really astounding, and I really like the fact that Jonathan picked up right away on the fact that how can it be in a peak time that we have 50% of the people cancel the service, and in a non-peak time when we have the same number of vehicles, we still get 50% of the people not canceling it. None of this makes any sense. And somebody needs to be looking at it and making sure that we optimize the service for the riders. And if we optimize the service for the riders, there will be more riders and more cars off the road, and a great help to the taxpayers of Alamorado. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think after hearing all of these ideas, and again, not having the expertise of the freebie people here, I'm not sure a loop system like a trolley ride. I remember some of the kids from the high school telling me that they used to ride the school bus, and they said, you could live like a block south of the school, but if you had to ride the bus all the way down to the end of the loop and then get off because they didn't want you to cross the street. So, an 18-mile stretch, that could be a very long way, but I'm sure if you put all the ideas together and talk to the experts there at the company about it, that they might be able to make a hybrid kind of system. Yeah, and a lot of these things could absolutely just be on a trial basis and see how it goes with, the children and the animals and the fees and all of that. So if the contract has, a little bit of an out kind of a clause, not so firm on things on our side anyway, that would always be good.
Joe?
Well, I think we got off the track a little bit, but I think it was for a good reason. I know we were supposed to be concentrating more on the contract, but I think with all these ideas that we came up with, and now I don't know how they're all going to be incorporated into a contract, but I think that it's all a great idea, and the bottom line is we're looking the best way to improve the system and mainly cut down on the wait times, which I think will improve the system. Now, you did intrigue me about having a per car, which might encourage more people, to use it if you did it by car, but I don't know how they would come up with that. I also kind of agree with both of you. I think that the residents who are already paying for it with our tax dollars shouldn't have to pay the same that the tourists that come down and spend $800 a night on a hotel room. But I understand that there are restrictions in the grant, and so we kind of, I don't know if it could just be, if we ever pick anybody up from the island or Chica, they have to pay, but the residents don't have to pay. I don't.
Our own shuttles too.
Yeah. Alamorado Resort Collection is kind of solving that problem for us.
But as far as keeping up, somebody keeping track of it, I think that would be, a great thing to have, just an oversight committee to meet, maybe just, even if it's once a month and go over some of the records, just to see how they've changed. If they all kind of look the same all the time, that might be a little suspicious. But, at least we can oversee what they are and give recommendations.
I see Rob still on. Rob, I know you have a hard time talking. Do you want to have any closing remarks? Rob Stober?
Oh, I think I'm good. I appreciate everybody's time and comments this evening.
Thank you, and thank you for participating, even though I know you're not feeling well. I think that it's almost 7:30. We're going to close the meeting. I appreciate all of y'all, all your input. I thank, once again, we had 4 council people here, several citizens. We thank everybody for participating, and we'll take it all consideration. And any closing things after the meeting, make sure you email me or call me, and we'll do it. So we'll conclude the meeting with a public workshop, and thank you again for your participation.